Welkom beste luisteraars bij weer een nieuwe kleine boodschap.
Ja, welkom bij de podcast over alles Efteling met Tim Hinsen en Paul Sprongers.
Hey Tim, we zitten weer bij de buurwas.
Jazeker, we zitten in de radiostudio van de Breda University of Applied Sciences.
Zeker, en we zijn natuurlijk niet voor niks. We hebben sowieso later vandaag weer een gastcollege wat we hier mogen geven.
Jazeker, we gaan weer alles vertellen over eigenlijk de verhouding tussen de themepark professional en de fans en de fanmedia. Hè?
Zeker. We zijn niet de enige die vandaag een gastcollege komen geven, want onze gast ook. En dan moeten we misschien wel weer even een belangrijke mededeling doen aan onze luisteraars, Tim.
Jazeker, want we hebben weer iemand uit de Verenigde Staten tegenover ons zitten. Net zoals een jaar geleden. Toen zaten we hier met Stephen Grant, natuurlijk de Amerikaanse architect die onder andere voor Walt Disney Imagineering heeft gewerkt. Maar nu hebben we iemand anders uit Florida tegenover ons.
Zeker, en die gaan we zo introduceren. Maar ja, het is een gast die alleen maar Engels kan spreken, dus wij gaan ook overschakelen naar Engels.
Wij gaan weer ons beste steenkolen Engels naar boven halen.
Ja, dus wees gewaarschuwd. But we're here in Breda with our guest. And our guest today is Ray Eddy, currently lecturer at the University of Central Florida, but also an entertainment manager and stunt manager at the Walt Disney Company.
Yes, previously, yes. Before teaching, I did that.
Cool. So, Ray, welcome in our podcast.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Ray, can you tell our listeners who you are and what you do for a living at the moment?
Sure. My current full-time position is working in education. I teach at the University of Central Florida in Orlando. I was teaching in an entertainment management and theme park management program for 5 years. I've recently switched over to the College of Business for the past 3 years. I've been over there and enjoying my time teaching. But that comes from after a long career in entertainment, which I think we'll probably get to next.
Of course. Yeah. And you live in Florida?
I do, in Orlando.
Oh, we're jealous.
Yeah, we understood that your first job in the theme park industry was a lifelong dream of yours.
It was. It really was.
So what did you do?
Since I was a child, I wanted to be a stuntman. That's, some people want to be a fireman or an astronaut. I, for some reason, was drawn towards being a stuntman. I thought that was the really neatest job I could imagine. I never thought it was realistic, and so I kind of ignored it for my whole life until eventually I was inspired to give it a try and was lucky enough to find a way to make it work. So I was doing little things, commercials and small films, nothing really important. But then I auditioned for the Indiana Jones stunt show at Disney's Hollywood Studios in Orlando, and I was able to get that job. So I played Indiana Jones in that show for about 8 years. Wow. That was an absolute lifelong dream, and it was a wonderful experience. Probably the best job I've ever had or ever will have. No offense to my current employers.
Where did you get the idea as a kid? From watching movies? Or?
Yeah, strangely, I stumbled across some sort of documentary about stuntmen. I wish I could find it again because I can remember specific scenes from the documentary about how they were describing what stuntmen did and how what their job required. And I thought that just looked like the most fun because you dress up in a costume and you get to pretend you ride horses and you pretend to fight somebody and you jump off of things and it's just active and fun and crazy. I just vivid memories of that very specific documentary that I watched that ever since then as a child, I thought that's where I want to be. And I ignored it for many years until I finally came back to it.
And you ended up in Walt Disney World. Mm-hmm. Did you know the resort already?
One of my jobs that I had before I got into entertainment, I worked with marching bands, musical, it's for an American football halftime, they have musicians, and you may have seen them, right? They come out and march around the football field. And I was teaching music groups and specifically drummers. I had been a drummer my whole life. And they went to Orlando on a spring break trip to visit Disney World. And on that trip, I saw the Indiana Jones show. And I was like, now I see my calling. That's where I should be. And a few years later, I was able to make that happen.
How did it happen in the end? Because I can imagine if you wanted to become a stuntman, that was still a dream of yours?
Yes.
So I can imagine that your focus might have been on Los Angeles and the Hollywood area?
It was.
Yeah.
That's right. It's difficult to get into the industry. And anything in entertainment it seems it's almost more who you know than how talented you are. And I didn't know anybody. I wasn't related to anybody who was famous or in the industry, so I was trying to crack in on my own, and it was very difficult. So I did all the training that I could. I trying to become physically fit, and I learned about rock climbing and skydiving and adventurous things. And then I got more specific with gymnastics and martial arts and stage combat. And I met some stunt people, learned about high falls and fire burns and car stunts. And I just was really having the time of my life just training. And my idea was to try to move to LA and sort of break into the business, but I didn't really even know how to do that. So I thought if I could get this job at Disney World, I would go there for 2 or 3, 5 years at most.
Yeah.
And then I'll move on to LA and Los Angeles and become a big stuntman in film, and ended up just loving it there, and also learning about what it does take to get into the film industry and how difficult it is. And again, even if you are experienced, unless you are connected already, it requires years of networking and just meeting people, and join a softball league because stunt guys play in that softball league, and hopefully you can meet them that way. Or you meet someone and take them out for drinks and say, tell me stories, and laugh at their stories and hope that they like you enough that they hire you. Something. It's just a process of networking that's very difficult. And some people are very good at it. And I have a lot of respect for people who are able to do that sort of effort along with the physical training and the challenge of the work itself. But that part just didn't really interest me that much. And nothing against it. I just didn't really have a lot of desire to go through that aspect that wasn't really related to the work. So I thought I'm enjoying working 5 days a week, doing stunts every day, and I can do small projects on the outside for fun on my own or with friends. I had an agent, I was acting, I did some commercials, I did some small movies and little things here and there. Just was having a lot of fun, and the lifestyle was really very comfortable, and I really enjoyed it. So I was willing to make the sacrifice of not becoming a big-time Hollywood stuntman, because I was doing stunts and having a great career, but not going through the part of it that wasn't as interesting to me. So
You started as Indiana Jones in Disney World.
Yes.
Did you play more roles?
I did. The next one I got after that, there's a show at the same park, Disney's Hollywood Studios, that's called Fantasmic. It's their big end-of-day spectacular, and so they have all types of different characters. And in one sequence that has now been changed, it's not there anymore, was from the movie Pocahontas. And John Smith, her boyfriend, I guess you call it, comes out and does a big stunt, swings around a mountain on a rope. And then there's some other characters who do fights and little explosions. So I played all the stunt roles in that show occasionally. And then I was able to be cast in a sword fighting stunt show over at Universal Studios just across town. So many parks, so many shows. Very lucky to get that position as well. And it only was around for a year, but that really solidified my passion for sword fighting specifically and stage combat. I liked it already, but I just fell in love with everything about combat. And that became sort of my true passion as far as in stunts, was much more of that work. So did that for a year, then that show went away. Other little shows here and there. Those are the biggest ones. But until they moved me over as a manager, Disney decided that I'd be more effective after about 8 years being a stunt performer, as a stunt manager, because there are very few stunt performers who want to go into management. They usually want to jump off of buildings and pretend to fight people. That's all the fun stuff. And management is just work and paperwork and not as much fun. So Disney, I'll just say they strongly encouraged me to go that route, because they just needed someone who had what they saw as the ability to be a manager. With my background, I already had a master's degree. I'd already run my own business. I had experience with management topics and a stunt background. So they found me as a good fit. So they moved me to another show called Lights, Motors, Action, which was a very big thing. It was a very big popular show. It was cars and motorcycles and jet skis and explosions and machine guns. And they made me over there as a manager, and I had a wonderful time learning that whole show and learning those aspects of stunts. I was able to get back into performing in that show occasionally. There's a stunt coordinator actor role that I was able to jump into sometimes. So for the next 6 or 8 years, I was there as a manager or performer. And then when that show closed, that's when I went back they offered me a position as a stage manager in other shows and continue my career and maybe advancing in the operations side of Disney World. Great career, great opportunity. Just decided I was more interested in performing, so to speak, and teaching allows that. So I decided to leave Disney and go into education as a career.
Just to be clear, because we also have a Lights Motor Action show at Disneyland Paris.
Yes.
But you performed in the one you managed
in
one
Orlando.
In Orlando,
Yes,
okay.
yes, in Orlando. And Paris was first, and then the one in Orlando came second. And it was around from 2005 to 2016, I believe, is when it closed. So I was there from about 2009 to 2016 when it closed, and then that's when I decided to move on.
And what does a stunt manager do? Because is it mostly about managing the people, or also about some creative aspects of stunts?
Well, I'd love to say creative aspect. I'd love to be part of that, but they were all created, designed, and implemented when I arrived. But it is much more about keeping the stunt performers safe while they perform. So most shows have one show caller, a stage manager, on a headset, as you can imagine, just making the cues, telling lights to come up and down, music start and stop, special effects, video playback, something like that. in that show, it was so complex. They had 2 managers in every show, and one did the things I just described, and one was in communication with all the people who were doing the stunts, the drivers and motorcycle riders and jet skis. And so just keeping them safe. They knew their choreography and where to go, but they couldn't see what I could see from my view of the whole stage. They might be driving around a corner into somebody whose car had stalled out and they would crash. So I would have to make a call to stop them immediately so they wouldn't crash. So it was just telling them when to go and when to stop, and then making an abort call for an emergency stop if necessary. So it was basically running the show, telling them they knew what they were doing. I would just say, go stop, essentially, for all their moves.
During your time at Disney, you also started your own production company.
I did.
Can you tell us a bit about that?
Sure. I was enjoying my work as a performer and even going into management. And outside of Disney, starting out, I was also taking acting classes, just trying to advance my skill set. So I was able to acquire a couple of different agents in Orlando and one in Miami, and they were getting me out on auditions. I did, as I said earlier, I did some commercials and small things. Nothing ever. I was never a big time. I'm not in a Marvel movie, stunts, that kind of thing. But lots of fun. And what I learned was, I enjoyed the work I was doing, but the role you dream about doing isn't really out there unless you make it for yourself. If you get lucky, like the Indiana Jones show was absolute perfection. I couldn't have asked for a better role that fit my skill set and my particular look and age at the time. I was a good fit for the role. But when you go audition for commercials or film, it's whatever they have written, and you can choose to audition or not and do whatever they say. And it might be fun and it might not, but you're kind of giving them what they're looking for. But if you have a role you want to play or a story you want to tell or an action that you want to partake in, unless you write it yourself, you're kind of at someone else's mercy. So I thought it's time to start writing my own things and producing my own things. So that's why I did that. And we made small things. My friends and I, who I'd worked with on different projects, we made some shorts and some other films. There was one film in particular that I'd already been cast in that the producer left, and so I took it over and finished it, a feature-length film that I was able to finish with my production company and get distribution, it didn't ever go anywhere. Of course, most films don't, but it was a lot of fun to run the production side of the entertainment industry.
It gave you some freedom, I guess.
It did,
yeah,
very much.
Before we continue to your education adventures, you also were the entertainment manager at Walt Disney World?
Yes. So that job is very similar to Stunt Manager. In fact, they have many of the same responsibilities, but the Stunt Manager was really just for that stunt show and other shows that had stunts in them. Even the Indiana Jones stunt show only had one entertainment manager who just made all the cues, because there wasn't someone on a headset in a car. They couldn't hear it. They had to communicate. So it was much simpler from a management perspective. So really, Lights, Motors, Action was the one show that had a specific stunt manager role. And once I had done that, then they cross-trained me in other shows. Because, to be quite honest, that show is regarded to be the most difficult show of any Disney show, maybe even any show. I mean, that sounds very grandiose, of craziest show on the whole planet. But one of the most difficult shows in a theme park to call from a stage manager, entertainment manager, or stunt manager point. So doing that kind of gave me credibility to go anywhere at Disney. You did that show? Well, then you can certainly do this show. So they trained me as the stage manager role, entertainment manager role at the same show, and at Lights, Motors, Action. And then at another show called the Jedi Training Academy, and then another show called Voyage of the Little Mermaid, a puppet show. I mean, parades and Fantasmic. I worked over at Fantasmic as a manager too. So those were all entertainment manager roles. The stunt manager role sort of opened the door for more chances to do more shows from that different way.
So that was very focused on Disney's Hollywood Studios.
Primarily, because they have the most shows. Really,
okay,
there were some shows over at Animal Kingdom that would have been fun. The Festival of the Lion King is a wonderful show, and the Finding Nemo, the musical, are very active, wonderful shows. The only reason I wasn't really over there is because just the structure of management. Everyone who works in management is assigned to a certain team, and you work all those shows, and they tend to not cross too much because they need you where you are. So I think what had happened, if I had stayed in that role, eventually I believe I probably would have been moved to Animal Kingdom at some point, and maybe I could have called those shows as well. But they sort of categorize you by park and by area frequently.
Yeah, I was wondering that, because the travel distances, they are not too grandiose. But
not at all.
If you constantly need to move between parks, that takes a lot of time out of the day. Yeah. Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Later you ended up in education. Mm-hmm. I guess it's a big step.
Yes.
Why did you make that choice?
Well, interestingly, that was my plan before I went into stunt work. without going into unimportant details, I started off going into business. I had a degree. I went to Duke University. I got a degree in mathematics and economics. I worked for a consulting firm. Decided that it wasn't quite my personality. It's a great job. I just wanted to have something more active. So I thought I'm going to go into education. And being a math teacher was always kind of my fallback plan if business didn't work out, because I always liked teaching. I had been a resident assistant when I was in college, which is helping students with, some conflict resolution and programming and counseling, that sort of thing. But I'd also done a lot of tutoring when I was in high school and college, helping people with their math. And I just liked that. So I went back. After a year at the consulting firm, I went back and got my master's degree in education back at Duke, called the Master of Arts in Teaching, to be a high school math teacher. Decided to go through some other things. It's a very long story, not relevant to today, but different jobs and different things to become self-employed, to work with these marching bands, to try to train to become a stuntman. That's sort of, I put that education on the back burner. I put it on hold while I ran this crazy dream to be a stuntman, which ended up lasting 20 years. And then when that got to a point where I thought, I'm not going to go to Los Angeles. Disney has been wonderful, but I see where my trajectory is going. It's not exactly where I necessarily want to go with my daily work. I'm going to go back to teaching. So it's more of a return to it than a switch to it. And ended up deciding at that point to teach at the college level just because I was qualified to, and it's just a lifestyle choice. It was a great place to be. I taught math at a school called Valencia College in Orlando. It's a community college for a year. Loved it there. Absolutely. Valencia is a wonderful place to teach. But then University of Central Florida started this brand new program, this entertainment management program I mentioned earlier. I taught, and that was a brand new program. They needed brand new faculty, people who had worked in entertainment and were qualified to teach. And I sort of checked all the boxes they needed.
So I can imagine.
It kind of coincidentally worked out. Strangely, the campus was literally 1.5 miles from my house. I couldn't imagine, just a few kilometers away. I could almost walk to work. So that was a great transition to there, and I did that. As I said, then I went to the business school just for different opportunities. So
what did you teach initially at the University of Florida?
So my first thing was classes in entertainment. So I taught one called Introduction to the Entertainment Industry. I taught a class called Theme Park and Attraction Management because I'd done that for so long. Those were my primary two. There's one called Entertainment Arts and Events, about designing entertainment events and productions. Those were the primary ones, were about entertainment management and theme park management and some design, and really fun. Just wonderful students, wonderful colleagues. It was a great opportunity. I really loved it there. The switch to the business school was just more of expanding my horizons, trying new things, and moving across. It's just across town to a different part of the same university, just a different college within University of Central Florida.
Today we're in the beautiful city Breda.
Mm-hmm.
You've spent a week in the Netherlands so far.
Mm-hmm.
How did you end up in Breda? What's your connection with the Breda University?
Well, once you start working at a university, there's often an expectation that you do research as well as teach. And so as I was teaching in the entertainment program, I acquired my PhD. I got my doctorate at University of Central Florida in a program called Text and Technology. And the focus of my research, my dissertation, was the concept of immersion and how that affects the experience in entertainment. Specifically, how much does it make you enjoy your entertainment? Does immersion make it better, or does it make it distracting? And I could talk for 2 hours about that, which I'm not going to take you down that unfortunate path.
We wouldn't mind.
So that's kind of got me interested in doing some more research, and I met some wonderful colleagues. In particular, a great friend of mine named Dr. Carissa Baker back in Orlando. And she does lots of research in theme parks and storytelling, and is a wonderful researcher and a wonderful teacher and a great friend. And she was inviting me to join her on a research project that she was working on with some faculty members here in Breda. Monique Hoover is here, and Niels Vitkampf. Is that close to pronounce his name? I hope I pronounced his name. I'm sorry, Niels, for saying your name wrong, in particular, and others. And was able to work on this wonderful project about immersion in theme park storytelling design. And through that connection, the nice folks here at BUAS have invited me over to give some presentations over here. So I've given 3, and I have one more later today. And today, chatting with you all, which has been great.
And we've seen your program. You've had a very busy week.
It has been, yes. Yes, but it's been lots of fun. So I've given several presentations to different student groups. One was on themed experiences in Orlando. One was on general storytelling and theming in theme parks in general. And then I gave one yesterday or 2 days ago on my research, my dissertation topic, which is about this immersion in gaming and entertainment. And then yesterday we went to Efteling, for the entire day at Efteling, which was wonderful. And then today is my last day here, and I have a presentation on a topic that's really a passion of mine, which all these are interests of mine, but a passion of mine. It's called embodied storytelling, which is how you tell a story without words. And that could be dance, is the most obvious way you can imagine to communicate a message without saying anything. But for me, it's stunts and action and fights and explosions. And what story are you telling without saying words that you can communicate non-verbally? So that's going to be my presentation today. It's my last one.
Yeah, we're in luck because we'll be listening in.
Wonderful.
Yeah, we will be present. Ray, you have a lot of experience on shows and entertainment in theme parks.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think is the importance of good shows and entertainment for theme parks?
That's a really good question. I recognize that shows at theme parks is not always everyone's top priority. They're my favorite thing. And I think maybe researchers here might agree that often it's there, but many rides have stories as well. But I could go to a theme park and just watch shows all day and not ride any rides, which I recognize is not everyone's first choice. Rides are probably the most popular thing at most parks. In Orlando, often it's rides or meeting characters face to face, taking pictures and getting autographs with different characters. Everyone just can't wait to see these characters up close. But I would just go see the shows. So recognizing that that's not everyone's priority, I think the fact, and even our research has shown, that having a strong narrative, having a strong story connected to whatever you're doing does allow the audience member, the guest, to enjoy it at a deeper level. There's more of a connection, an emotional connection to something that has a story to it than just, rides are terrific. And you can ride a roller coaster and go fast and be scared, and that's a wonderful time. But if there's something deeper, some reason that you're on this ride, or something's chasing you, or you're going after something, and there's more going on that you can laugh or scream, or something that makes it more tangible, more visceral, more connected to you emotionally, it just heightens the experience. And so I think that is a really important part of what theme parks are able to bring.
We also had a listener who had an interesting theory. He pitched this new concept of entertainment minutes. His theory was that shows are really great for that because you have to wait. You maybe have to wait half an hour, for example, before you're seated, and then a few minutes for the show starts. Mm-hmm. But then you are entertained for maybe 25 to 30 minutes.
Yes.
So the value of the balance of waiting and getting entertainment value out of that is very good in that case.
Very true, because you can wait in a line for a ride for 2 hours, and you ride for about 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's great 3 minutes. I'm not saying anything bad about it. It's an extraordinary time. But then, you wait in for a show, maybe not even quite that long. Often the wait is less because it's not in high demand. So you might wait for an hour, and then you watch a show for 30 minutes. That's a terrific balance of your time. I agree, yeah.
What are the do's and don'ts for a successful entertainment show in a park?
Really, all the same aspects of what you would see in good storytelling. I think audiences really appreciate being trusted to understand what's going on without being spoon-fed everything. Don't tell me everything that is obvious. That's kind of insulting to make someone, you can't figure this out, we better tell you what's going on. No, I'm smart, I can figure this out. Don't waste my time. Allow me to enjoy the experience and interpret what I see and infer things that might be going on. That allows the user to, again, it's an intellectual process, but it becomes an emotional process. So telling a story through visuals, through nonverbals, through relationships. A glance at somebody says something more than, hey, I think you're cute. That is a much more impactful way to send the same message. So that's what I think is great about wonderful storytelling in any environment, is let us interpret what's going on. The don't, I think, would be don't be too blunt. Don't use a sledgehammer.
No explicit storytelling.
Right. I think it's not necessary. Sometimes you have to, and it's too complex. But if you can let the audience figure out themselves, that's a great thing. And then what I would probably jump to on the topic I would bring to answer your question is, from my research, was the concept of immersion. Some audience members love that. They really want to be immersed. And some don't want to work that hard. So giving an audience a choice, what do you want to do in this? And the best example I have that has usually been the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, which is at Universal Studios, different parks around the world, but the one I see, of course, is in Orlando most frequently. And some guests will show up and they'll have on the costume as if they're a student at Hogwarts, and they have a robe and they have a wand, and then they cast spells, and they can pretend they're in this world, interacting with the shopkeepers and drinking the butterbeer and having a real I'm in Hogwarts kind of experience. And then other people just want to show up and have a good time. They want to ride a ride and take a picture and talk on their phone and drink a real beer instead of a butterbeer and just relax and imposing upon them the requirement that they must interact in character in a certain way. It becomes tiresome for some people. So allowing people the choice. How far do you want to jump in? If you want to jump in all the way in the deep end of the pool and swim, great. We'll have that opportunity for you. But we don't require that for you to have a good time. You can make your choice where that is.
And that somewhat reminds me of maybe the reason that the Star Wars hotel failed, that Disney started.
That's very possible. Yeah, there could be a number of reasons for that. But,
yeah, of course.
I was very briefly. What I would say, I think the main challenges was the cost.
Yeah,
it was about $6,000 for a family of four, which is
for 2 nights. I think
for 2 nights for a family of and which is about €5,400, something like that. I'm approximating.
Correct,
pretty close. And the number of people who love Disney enough to want to spend an immersive weekend in a resort where every moment of your day is surrounded by Star Wars, those people exist, but they also must have enough money to do that. And that's where the crowd becomes smaller, is I love Star Wars, but I can't afford it. Or I can afford it, but I don't love Star Wars. They're out. So it must be the people who have both of those categories, and that's a small segment, and most wouldn't do it more than once because it is cost prohibitive. You can spend a third that much and have a wonderful time somewhere else. So
you have all different kinds of entertainment in parks, street atmosphere, shows, parades. What do you think is the right mix for a park?
That's a good point. I think that I like the fact that parks have everything in them. So again, someone like me can go and watch shows, whether it's a street show or a theatrical show, and people who like rides can have rides. So mix. I think as long as you have enough for someone to take an entire day to do whatever they want to do, maybe you don't have 8 hours worth of shows or 8 hours worth of rides. Of course, once you layer in a meal break and waiting in line and shopping a little bit and doing other fun things too, that's kind of your whole day. So I think it's fair to say that, in my opinion, if you're about half shows, so there's another term, attractions, which is, it could be a dark ride, which is not a thrill ride. I'm sure you know this. I'm speaking to experts. So it's not a thrill ride like a roller coaster that might scare some people away, but it's very much more of a storytelling thing. And so it's a ride, but it's a story. But it also lasts 3 or 4 minutes instead of the 30-minute show length. So having that chance for the attractions where you can see things without having to be required to do the scary part if you don't like scary rides, but give the thrills for those who want them. Have 3 or 4 terrific thrill experiences, have some wonderful dark rides for the in-between, and have 2 or 3 shows for someone to go see. That's why I think Efteling is a wonderful balance. It has everything and everything you can imagine. And some parks, if you look at a Cedar Point, a Cedar Fair type of park over in the United States, it is coasters, coasters, coasters. And if you love coasters, you'll have the best time of your life and be ride all day long, different roller coasters. Not as much of a storytelling experience, but that's their choice. And they have plenty of an audience for that too. And then you go to a Puy de Fou, which is only shows. My dream. I got to go. I got to go one time. So lucky. It's an extraordinary, just the one in France. I haven't seen the one in Spain yet. So you have opportunities to go where you draw your audience. But if you want to reach everybody, then you do everything. And that's why I think Efteling and other Disney parks, Universal parks have a good balance of all those things.
And what's your favorite category of entertainment?
Absolutely, it's the shows. The shows are I could, as I said, I spent an entire day just doing shows. So they're all great. Everything at these parks are great, but shows are my favorite.
And if you just look at the shows, is it important to have a mix of shows? Because the shows that you performed in, they were the ones that I think have audiences of maybe over 2,000 people in some cases.
They did. The Indiana Jones show was about 2,000. Lights, Motors, Action was about 5,000.
Whoa. Okay.
And Fantasmic is about 8,000.
Yeah.
But those are unusually large. Most have small audiences, a few hundred, maybe 1,000, something like. I'm not sure the exact capacity of like a Beauty and the Beast. The Voyage of the Little Mermaid, the puppet shows, it's a small, but they do a show every 25 minutes. They churn them through very fast. Whereas Indiana Jones might have 5 shows a day. Lights, Motors, Action was often 2 shows a day because it was such a huge extravaganza, but they had a giant audience for that time too. So Having the different sizes helps. But then, a young child might really enjoy Little Mermaid, where they can see these puppets. But they might be scared by the explosions at Indiana Jones and things are jumping out, and the music is kind of designed to shock you. And little kids get scared in that show. I've seen parents take kids out in the middle because they're too scared. So it's having that variety of the intensity level is also a great value.
You're also an expert on immersion. How would you describe the phenomenon immersion?
Sure. So from my definition, from my research, is essentially it's a state of heightened focus that leads to several other things taking place. For example, you feel as though you are surrounded by a different environment, like you feel like you are somewhere else physically relocated. You don't notice outside stimuli. So if someone calls your name or maybe your phone buzzes, you might not notice it because you're so focused on what's going on. And the third thing is something I call time slippage. I don't call it that. That's the term for it. The third thing is time slippage, which is you don't realize how much time has gone by because it's such a wonderful experience that you think you're playing a video game for 30 minutes and you look at your watch, it's been 4 hours because it was so great. So those aspects, that's what I would say what immersion is. When those things are all happening to you, you are immersed in that activity.
And then the interesting question is, of course, how can you reach that?
Right. And that's the big question is how can you make that happen? And of course, it applies to many different activities. So video games are different from a theme park. You can be immersed in a great book. Just if you're reading a book and you're comfortable and all of a sudden, 4 hours have gone by, it's lovely.
I guess binge watching is also a form of immersion.
Absolutely. You might not realize if it's on autoplay, you watched 8 episodes in a row of a TV show and your whole Saturday is gone. It's a lovely day. But same thing. So in my research, what I'm determining is it's really the quality of the activity itself that allows you to become more easily immersed. So a terrific video game will pull you in, whereas one that's not that interesting, not that exciting, and a big part of that is, once again, the narrative. Does it tell an interesting story that really compels you to, I can't wait to find out what happens to this character. How can I get past this bad guy to advance the story and make it move on? That's something that keeps you coming back. And same with binge watching a television show. A cliffhanger at the end of I can't stop now. I got to know what happened. So you keep on going because the story is so drawing you in so strongly. So having that great story allows for the opportunity to become more immersed. And then as I dig deeper into it, it's again about, do you want to be immersed, choosing to, or do you want to not be immersed? And all I'd say about that is some people choose not to because they have other things they must pay attention to. Say they are on call at a hospital. They can't turn their phone off because if they call to come in for the emergency room, they have to go there quickly. Or if they're babysitting a child and the child's taking a nap, you can't put on headphones and clutter all the noise because you have to hear when the child wakes up. So sometimes you can't let yourself be immersed. And sometimes, again, as I said before, in a theme park, you don't want to be immersed. You just want to relax and chill out with your friends versus really fully getting into cosplay.
And how do you reach this immersion in a theme park or in a ride or a themed area?
Well, if it's a compelling story, a strong narrative that you identify with, relate to, and are interested in the motivations and results of those characters you are observing or interacting with, then it becomes much more immersive. And then the next iteration of that, the next level of that immersive category then becomes, as I just alluded to, is that interaction. Shows and rides have evolved from just being passive observations to where the guest can actually now interact with that activity and take part in it and maybe change what happens. And that becomes you become much more engrossed in it because you are focused on what do I need to do to advance the story or to change the story's outcome. The same way you do in a video game, but in a theme park, you now can actually affect outcomes of things. It's not going to change the track of a roller coaster, but you can certainly change what you see in some places. And so a good story, compelling story, and some option for interactivity will allow someone to become more easily immersed.
Do you think immersion is a must for a good themed ride or a good theme park?
I still think it comes down to giving someone the choice. If they want to be immersed, it's wonderful to have that chance. And if the design of it is a high enough quality, then they can be if they want to be. But if someone just wants to be scared by a fast roller coaster and not worry about a story and not think too hard, they should have that opportunity as well. Because requiring someone to put in effort is a real turnoff to some guests. They just, I'm here to relax. Don't make me work. Don't make me think. Don't make me process and make choices. I just want to ride a ride and watch a show and relax. So that's good to have that as well. But the chance to become immersed through high quality design is a great thing because it can heighten the experience for those who want it.
With that in mind, what do you think of very complex storytelling in some parks?
I think it can work if you're familiar enough with the story. Once it becomes too layered and too complicated, then your audience might become confused, and then they will just check out. That has been a challenge that I think, again, my opinion, just broadening this, that the Marvel Cinematic Universe has been challenged by that in some ways, because at times it feels as though there's an expectation that you've watched every other movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe to understand why this character is doing these things, or how these characters interact, or who this villain is. And if you haven't watched the movie or taken notes and gone back and reviewed the movies that you watched before, what's going on? And it becomes, the more complex it becomes, the more frustrating it becomes. And then the audience starts to dwindle, which may be one of the reasons why, and they're still making lots of money, but the crowds aren't as big as they were at their heyday, at their height. So I think it can be too complex, and then it requires more effort than even the most rabid fan will have a wonderful time. But that proportion of people who are willing to know that much or do that much research ahead of time becomes smaller and smaller, then your audience starts to shrink.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So you could say that if the story becomes too complex, some people might still enjoy it, but the ones who are checking out, that group will be larger and larger as the story becomes more complex.
I think that can happen, yeah.
Are there more of those things that can take people out of the immersed state?
Mm-hmm. Sure. So besides a complex story, I think one of the biggest causes of losing that immersive state is a poorly designed show or story where a character does something that doesn't make any logical sense. And then as an audience member, they wouldn't do that. Why did they do that? That's okay. This is dumb. I don't want to watch anymore because this is frustrating and stupid. So poorly designed is a big part of it. Another one is technical challenges. In a video game, if there's a lag or a glitch and you're really focused on this battle and it freezes, you're like, your enthusiasm, your energy, your adrenaline just saps away. And, I can't believe this is such a disappointment. So technology can do it, story can do it. Those are the two biggest ones. And then another one would just be distractions. If you're very focused and then, say some people will actually want to play a video game and they'll want to be so immersed, they'll put on a headset, they'll close the window shades, they turn their phone off, flip it over so the light won't even distract them, and they're very locked in. And then someone comes in and taps them on the shoulder, and then they break their moment. So it could be just outside distractions can break that immersion as well.
Or you're in a dark ride and one of the emergency exits is open and daylight is streaming in. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Very good.
One of the other visitors in your boat thinks it's a good idea to film the whole show with flashlight on.
Right, talking, laughing.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Talking about a too complex story, I wonder, you've been to the Efteling, we will come to that soon, but you also visited Danse Macabre, the newest ride.
Oh, yes.
Was the story understandable for you?
I had the advantage of going with locals who helped me a bit, but it did make sense. I could tell from the queue line on the way in is so beautiful. They put you in different phases that sort of explain what's happening. So you see I don't want to give it away for guests who haven't seen it yet, but the story develops itself through the course of the line that you're waiting in. So by the time you get in there, you can see it's obviously involves music, and there's a composer. That's not giving away anything that's going to hurt your experience. But this composer is conducting this music, and then all the action begins. And it does make sense because it's very macabre is the word. It's very ghostly. It's very, you can tell, death is a character involved with the entire story. And so because the music works and the environment works, the design, the costumes, even the employees, do they call them cast members at Efteling? The same they do? Or are they employees?
No, employees, yeah.
Employees, okay.
Hosts.
Hosts, very good. At Disney, they call them cast members. But in any case, everyone is maintaining that theme all the way throughout. And so from the queue line to the employees, to the ride, to the music, to the theming all around you, you get a real sense of what's going on. Even if the story of who this person was and why he's there may not be specifically knowable, and I only knew it because I had friends who told me, but even not knowing that, I could certainly tell what was happening, and hugely enjoyable ride. I thought it was terrific.
Great. Let's move to your Efteling visit. You've been to the Efteling yesterday. Was it your first visit ever?
I was lucky enough to get to go there about 6 years ago. I think it was, 2019, 5 years ago, 2019. It was the summer right before COVID hit. Actually, the last big trip I took before that happened. I came over with students. Took a study abroad trip with about 16 students to different theme parks and activities across Europe. So we went to Disney Paris. We went to Puy du Fou. That's when I got to see
cool.
that.
Yeah.
And we went to Phantasialand in Germany, and then Efteling. Those are our 4 big parks that we attended. And it was a wonderful experience back then, but it was different hosting a bunch of students, and the crowds were bigger, and it was in the summers. And I was certainly on my own there. We didn't really have a host taking us around everywhere. So I was interpreting things, but it was great the first time. Second time, even better, because I got to dig in deeper.
Good selection of parks, by the way, that you selected for the Europe trip. Yeah,
thank you. I was lucky.
I want to go on that trip as well.
Sounds good. So how was the day yesterday?
It was terrific. It was absolutely wonderful. I don't mind cold weather. I enjoy living in Florida. It's hot all the time, so being cold was a joy. So that was nice, and the rain wasn't bad, so that was fine. But the fact that we went this time of year when the crowds were lighter, and it was not a weekend, so we had the park, it felt like, to ourselves sometimes. No line was longer than 10 minutes, it seemed, and nothing. Danse Macabre was a little bit longer just because it's brand new and so popular, but totally worth it. So maybe 30 minutes. But it was a lovely park, a great experience, and we actually did Danse Macabre twice. It was so good. So and many other things that were excellent as well.
Did you meet any of the Efteling staff?
I did, and I'm not going to be able to pronounce their names correctly or even remember what all their names were because I met so many people. I'm sorry. Stefan. I remember Stefan, but his last name I can't pronounce.
Versleeuwen.
Versleeuwen.
Yeah.
That's good.
Was that close? Okay.
Yeah, very close.
Yes. Stefan was a wonderful host, showed us around, told us all kinds of details, things that he's allowed to share. You can't tell us things that are confidential, and I respect that. But understanding sort of how things were put together and designed and built and what the goals were, it was great to see sort of behind the curtain, especially with my background of working in the parks. It was nice to see how things worked as well. So it was terrific.
That's a luxury that not everybody has.
Yes.
What did you do in the park? Which rides did you visit?
So the first thing we did was Danse Macabre. Then we went over to Symbolica, which is, I think before Danse Macabre, I would say maybe was the central hub show of the dark ride anyway of the park. And that was great. And I guess you have a choice of 3 different paths, and we did the music path, which was wonderful. Dream Flight, which is pronounced differently in
Droomvlucht.
Droomvlucht. Okay, wonderful ride, and the thing that got me the most on that was their terrific use of space, because you go past a few things, but then there's one where you spiral down from a top level to a low level, and you see it from the top of the trees to the middle to the ground, and from every angle it's just a long view of a wonderful design. It was beautiful. It was really lovely. I enjoyed that very much. We of course had a lunch break. We went through the fairy tale forest for quite some time and saw many of the attractions, the cute little attractions there. They're so beautifully designed and creative and lovely. I can give you a list there, but it was just many of those attractions.
Was it one of the locations that you stopped at when you were there with students?
When I took the students to the park, we often would split up and go see their own things. So some of them were with me then, but I did Symbolica with a few students then. I did Dream Flight with some students then. We walked through the fairy tale forest. I think I was on my own there because I think they were ready to ride more rides.
Yeah.
But I wanted to see some of the storytelling aspects more, so we kind of split up at that point. But saw many of the same things that way.
Yeah, it's great that you have some time for this trip, because usually it's overlooked by people who mainly come for the rides. It's also, it's not like a show, but it's also in that category maybe a bit.
I agree. Yeah. I agree. But there's more to it when you give it the time and the attention it deserves. It's really terrific. So that was great. And then Fata Morgana, is that you pronounce
perfect.
that? Okay, I'm trying. Okay, then we did Danse Macabre again. I would say as amazing as Danse Macabre was, and it was worth two trips. Again, because I'm a show guy, we saw Ravelin, and I saw that last time I was here as well. And it obviously has changed a lot. They made big modifications to it from before, so it's a little bit shorter than it was. But what a terrific show, because it's obviously connected to Puy du Fou, where I was able to spend some time as well. And it reminded me of all the Puy du Fou shows with the technology and the great monsters and the horses and the birds, and the actors are so great. And the music, I absolutely love that show. If I lived here, I would want to work in that show. Absolutely. It was a wonderful show. So
knowing about your taste in shows, Ravelijn indeed ticks most of your boxes, I guess.
Absolutely does.
There's even sword fighting.
Sword fighting, lots of sword fighting, and fighting with other weapons too. I mean, I loved everything about that. We did, and then at the end, we just little things just to wrap up the day. We did Carnival Festival, which we referred to as the "It's a Small World" Efteling kind of.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Similar, right? And we walked through the little diorama, the very cute little that was very cute. And then we had some, went to the pancake restaurant for dinner. So it was a great day, very relaxing. It wasn't a big roller coaster day, thrill ride day. It was just a easy walk around and enjoy things and relax kind of day. And it was lovely, wonderful day.
If we look at the concept of immersion, what were the rides or the shows or things that you saw that grabbed you the most?
Well, Dance Macabre, of course. I mean, that just nothing like that. That really is a unique ride. I haven't seen anything that does that type of interaction with the guests in the parks. Now, I haven't been to a million parks like others may have been to more than I have, but that show was just, phenomenal. Everything about it, especially at the end when you're going through the big finale of it, it's so immersive. Was terrific. And I found Ravelin to be wonderful as well. I just think there's so much going on that no matter where you look, someone's doing something amazing. And I could just get caught up in that for a whole day. I think that was wonderful too. Other rides were great. Again, flying through the air with all the pixies and the trolls. You just get caught up. They even had smells. They pumped in. Yeah. Wonderful. I talk about that in my presentations. Is how can you get every sense involved? The hardest one is taste. You can't make someone eat something on a ride. You don't want to do that. That'd be kind of gross.
Paul's Keuken, they tried it. The pancake restaurant.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yes, that was a different immersive experience. But when you have the sight, sound, feeling, and smell, even it really gets almost every sense involved, and it really made that a terrific experience that way. Very immersive.
Were there things that surprised you in the park?
Oh boy. I guess because I'd been here before, not as much. Except Dance Macabre, of course, brand new. It was fantastic. Pleasantly, I had high expectations, as we said, but it exceeded them. So that was just terrific. I think what I like about the park, really, that sort of catches me, it's different from maybe some of the American parks, is the fact that it's I would consider it maybe laid back. It's kind of a relaxed park, which is nice. You don't need to feel like you have to rush to everything and rush in line and then experience a thrill ride and then rush off somewhere else. And there's crowds everywhere and everyone's pushing and jumbling and taking pictures. And it just felt like, maybe because of the time of year that I came, but even when I came with my students in the summertime, it still felt like I could see everything. And it never felt like it was chaotic. It felt like you could just enjoy yourself and bring your family and have a wonderful day and not feel rushed and harried the entire time.
Did you notice more differences between Efteling and typical American parks?
I think it just might have been the fact that it had that laid back style, and the fact that I don't know how to describe it as maybe being more of a European feel than an American feel. Yeah. It felt very natural. It felt very organic, if that's a good word to use. It just sort of felt like you're in nature. Everywhere was nature, and it was real trees. It wasn't implanted, fake trees. It was actual real nature everywhere. And then the actual animals, the birds and the squirrels and everything, you see them throughout. It sort of felt like you were enjoying part of nature through the park instead of being transported to a fairy world or a fantasy world that doesn't exist anywhere else. It felt like you were in the world, but seeing more because you're surrounded by it. That was a very nice part.
And you don't need a master's degree to plan your day.
Correct. Very true. You don't.
Are there also things that you thought that the Efteling lacked, or maybe something that they could learn from the parks over in the US?
I absolutely don't want to be the American who says, here's how you should do things, because here's how we do in America, because that you hear too much of that. That's I would say the biggest difference I saw, that is a choice, and not a bad choice, just a different choice, is generally I think I find a bit more technology in some of the attractions and rides. In terms of, for example, giant video screens everywhere that could change, and then as you're going by, so you have 3D glasses on, and the track is taking you upside down and flipping you around, and the technology sort of felt very, sometimes almost, I don't want to say oppressive in a bad way, but it's everywhere you look is a video screen or a flashing light or a strobe or a pyrotechnic effect, and it can be overwhelming in an amazing way. The technology is fantastic. It make a wonderful experience. And the difference here is not that they lack the ability, it's just so they made a choice to make it a more organic, natural type of feel. So that even though Danse Macabre is very modern technology in what they do in that ride, that attraction, it sort of still felt as if you were maybe back in time with old school, old style things, technology is being used, but the walls are gritty and breaking down and decaying because it's supposed to look like you're in this a graveyard kind of vibe. But I think not having that technology sort of forced down your throat was nice. It was just a different feel, a different joy, a very natural, enjoyable, organic feeling through the entire day instead of feeling like you were pulled into the future all the time.
What do you think the entertainment offer of Efteling needs?
First of all, I think it's a great park. I would not suggest that they make big changes. All I'd say is, as a show guy, I just love shows. I would have loved to see. I'm not saying you have to have another thing the caliber of Ravelin. That's sort of a one-off. You can't really recreate that in the same park. That's maybe too expensive. But a few other, and they had some little performances here and there. We saw a nice little puppet show outside the for little children. That was around Fairy Tale Land. That was lots of fun to see this real performances, and the kids really got into it. I wouldn't mind seeing another show, a smaller caliber show, even if it's a musical show or something. Not every park has shows, and that's a choice. But you have one just fantastic. That Ravelin is such an amazing experience. That maybe a smaller level of something else with a story of choose your fairy tale or something like a reference of something like the play Into the Woods, where they go through a bunch of different characters of different fairy tales all in one show. I'm not saying do Into the Woods in the park.
We had those in the 90s. My favorite shows.
Is that right?
Yeah, the fairy tale shows.
Of course.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Right.
But then we didn't have Ravelin yet. So.
Oh, no, so you drew your audience a different way. Sure. So I think that's what I would, that's what I would like if I came back to see another show. But what they're doing is already so terrific, and I have no notes, no corrections.
I was just thinking about the maybe the smallest show that the Efteling is currently performing. It's also a puppet show, but then an old-fashioned Dutch hand puppet show.
Oh,
I think it has a capacity of 25 people.
Yeah, something like that.
Sure. Okay. Nice.
Inside. So there's no wonder that you didn't see it. I'm not sure if they are currently performing it. I think so. But
yeah, I don't know if they do it on weekdays, but most of the big American parks have huge evening shows, huge parades. Mm-hmm. Do you think that would fit in the Efteling?
That's funny. I was thinking about that. There, if I'm not mistaken, when I came 5-6 years ago, there was a parade that came through the park.
Oh, on summer evenings. Yeah, there was only one time a week, I think.
Oh, really? Oh, then we got lucky the day we saw it.
Yeah. Really small one with
it was right. It was not very big, but it was lovely because they had the main icon characters came through. All the actors from Ravelin in costume came through, and just different you could see recognized characters, and it was great. It was it was a nice way to sort of end your night. But that sort of experience, they have parades at most of the parks at Disney, not all, and sometimes at Universal they might change for the season. They'll have one for the Christmas holidays. They'll have one for Mardi Gras, but not all the time. That's a great extravaganza to have, and it's wonderful to sit in one place and see everything go right past you, so you can see everybody for a few seconds, and that's terrific. But it does kind of shut the park down, so it takes a lot of organization to sort of recognize that you can't have a show end and release all of its attendees, all of its guests, into where the parade's going by, because then you'll have a traffic jam and you can't move anybody. So it's logistically challenging to do, but it was nice to see that. I enjoyed having that very small experience, and it just requires more challenge for the park to put it together. The end of night thing with the big fireworks or big laser effects and pyrotechnics, and some of them have become more complicated now, where they have digital projections, screenings of things on the sides of buildings to make it look like you're inside of you're immersed in that environment, is great. But it does sort of change the atmosphere of the park. They don't do one at the Disney's Animal Kingdom because of the animals. Having big explosions is a terrible thing. You'd scare your animals so they don't have one. But they have them at Magic Kingdom and Epcot, parks like that. They do. And it's really nice, but it really does feel as though that's a I don't know if I go back to the technology side. It's a big, massive extravaganza that maybe doesn't fit the vibe of Efteling as being a laid-back, relaxed, easygoing thing. If you all sat down and had to watch a giant fireworks display with lasers and visual projections, it's like, is that really what Efteling is all about? I don't know. I'm not sure if it would fit as well. I'm not saying it wouldn't be fun to watch, but not having it didn't diminish my experience. I think it worked out just fine.
Yeah, we do have one end of the day show that's on the lake that you pass when you get into the park.
Oh, right, the water.
Yeah, the water show.
Right,
yeah.
and that, yes, I did remember that now. That worked. Now, it's a water effect with a natural park as opposed to being lasers and big pyrotechnics and huge explosions. It was water and music and lights, and it fit that same feel that is very natural and organic, and it beautifully blended with how that park experience went. So I'd forgotten all about that. We didn't do that one yesterday.
I think we were busy eating the pancakes.
Probably had the pancakes. That's right. That was a tough choice, but we made the right one, I think.
I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. We talked about this before we started the interview, but one of our guilty pleasures, Tim, is watching people from other countries visiting the Efteling for the first time. But of course, we're also interested in the experience of people not from the Netherlands who don't understand the language, because some of the shows, especially the pre-shows, are usually only in Dutch.
Yes.
These days, sometimes like in Symbolica with some English sprinkled in.
Correct.
Can you pick it up, by the way? If the English sentences are spoken between all the Dutch?
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
okay.
You have to be paying attention. Because if you assume it's Dutch and you tune out, then you won't. But I was warned ahead of time that you'll catch some.
Okay, yeah, but the one...
That helped. But I think once you recognize it once, then you start listening for it in the future. So,
is it easy to understand everything that happens in the Efteling as a foreigner?
I think you get the general idea. I would say some specifics are lost. I had a great conversation with Niels, who used to work at Efteling, about the Ravelin storyline, because when I came the first time, they had that long pre-show of they were children, and then they kind of go through this portal and they go back and they become knights and they start fighting, which I guess was part of a television show or that obviously I've never seen. And he asked if I could figure out what the story was. And I said I could tell there were kids talking to, it looked like their dad. And I thought, when they go off this portal, I thought maybe there's something wrong with the family they have to go rescue. Maybe they're out of money and they're going back to try to find some way to save the family. And he just laughed. He's like, nope. Nope. They were just exploring in the woods and they came through a portal and then they became knights. But it didn't diminish the experience for me. I just thought, I can tell these kids need to do something and they're going back. And it was obvious that when they went through the portal and came out as knights, the kids are now knights. That's great. And then the story was the bad guys show up and they found the weapons, and weapons had different powers connected to different, earth, fire, water.
You understand more of the story than most Dutch people, I guess.
Well, again, it's my passion, so that's what I like.
Is there also sort of a charm not knowing everything exactly as it's... Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I would hate to be, who am I to say that you must explain things in my language? It's your country, it's your park, and I get to enjoy it from a perspective of an outsider of like, let me see what I can figure out, because it's not my story, it's not my culture, but I get to try to watch it and see what it's all about. And that challenge was interesting and fun. And if I got it right, great. But if not, I still had a good time. The bottom line was, even in not knowing what was going on sometimes, it was so great. Other shows, other rides, Symbolica, I was like, I don't know I still don't know what the story is. You're just kind of going around and looking at cool things. But
that's the story.
That's the story. Let's go look at cool things. And it's worth it. So it worked.
American parks usually focus on their own IP. Efteling focuses, when it comes to storytelling, on European folklore, on fairy tales. Do you think that would work in America as well? Focus on folklore, fairy tales, local stories?
I feel that one of the reasons why the American parks focus more on the IP is that they have way more influence and the ability to, I don't want to sound crass, but to market those things. If you have your own character and you own it and the trademark and the copyright, then you can do whatever you want with that character. Now, if something is it's in the common domain and anyone has access to it, it's been around for generations, and so anyone can tell the story because no one owns the copyright, then you can do those things. But the ability to sort of make it uniquely your own, the way that Disney has with many characters, with Beauty and the Beast and with Sleeping Beauty, so they've made their version of those things and then made them bigger and better. So they kind of in some ways have done that with a lot of local fairy tales. Universal Studios has a different focus than Disney in some ways, and they have their own IP, and they keep on acquiring new IP that they can that they can keep on expanding with, which is great. I wonder if it's a great question, because going back to sort of the fairy tale or the local stories, I'm just not sure if it would be big enough for what the American parks want. They want bigger and more impactful and more significant. I can tell one story about this too, of how it didn't work out. There was going to be a park, a Disney park. It was going to be called Disney's America. Have you heard of this story?
Yes. Yeah.
So okay, and how it didn't work out, and some of it was pushback from potential guests, or some of it was the local area where they're going to build it. The people who live there didn't want a park in their area, and I understand that. You want to live by a theme park, but the fact that uniquely American stories, it brings its own set of challenges. And I don't obviously want to get into anything political at all. This is not the topic of this podcast, but there are different versions of interpretations of the way that things happen in American history. And if you chose one version, then half the country will be very angry with you. And if you don't go into the one version, one other side will feel that maybe you have failed to recognize certain things that have happened in our past. But can you acknowledge terrible things in the past in a theme park? That's not fun. Can you gloss over them? Well, that's not real authentic and not really true to. So it's difficult to find a common ground in American history that would make a park based on that would be challenging. Whereas Knott's Berry Farm out in California just focus on the Old West. So they have a great theme of old American history without going through the literal American history of political change and turmoil. Just found a sort of their niche that worked very well for them. So I think I've rambled quite a bit on that topic. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, certainly.
Okay.
The Efteling is known for having a specific style based on the drawings by artist Anton Pieck. It's quite cohesive as a whole. We think there are some outliers like Carnival Festival, for example. Mm-hmm. Do you think that's a strength for the immersion, or do you think that it's best to have more of a diverse landscape in the park?
Oh, I think it's great. I think the entire park has a wonderful through line. It feels as everywhere you go, it's the same sort of setting, the same sort of characters, the same sort of feel. There's nothing wrong with having a park that has different lands. So you have Magic Kingdom, of course, is famous. Tomorrowland and Fantasyland and Main Street USA. They're all very different. Universal Studios Islands of Adventure. You have Dr. Seuss Land, and you have the Harry Potter Wizarding World of Harry Potter, and they couldn't be more different. And that's great. You can have a fun little time in one little area of the park and then go somewhere else and have a whole different experience. But then having one park of the entire theme, I think is beautiful. Everything ties together. Your restaurant has the same characters that you saw on one of the rides. Saw the kid holding the pancakes on Symbolica. He's from the restaurant. That's kind of neat. So everywhere you go, it's all tied together. So it's a very cohesive, thorough through line of that design, which I think is actually lovely for that park too. It works, in my opinion, it works really well.
Are there lessons Efteling could learn from the American parks?
I think the American parks, if I may be blunt, they know how to wring money out of people.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure that's what you're going for at this park. You're not trying to I'm not trying to say gouge people, but you buy your ticket at the park and then you have wonderful time. And if you want to buy some merchandise, that's great. You want to buy some food, that's terrific. They have everything you want is there if you want it. But you're not required to sort of pay extra to have a shorter line or pay extra to stay in a resort to get extra. Well, maybe actually you can, I think. An extra half an hour in the morning if you stay in the local resort. That's lovely. But the technology that the parks have incorporated make the park much more convenient, but more expensive. And again, I don't really know if that's really something that Efteling would want to learn, because it's great to have more income to make your park better and make a better experience. But if it becomes something where it's so cost prohibitive, then you're losing the people who you built the park for in the first place. And in some ways, I think some of the parks in Orlando seem to be losing some guests who can't afford to go there anymore. You might save for 3 or 4 or 5 years just to go for a week with your family, and that's amazing. But boy, should it require 5 years of savings to go to a theme park for a while? I don't know. So,
good question.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, because one of the core principles of Efteling is that it needs to be accessible to everybody, basically. So
right.
They also have specific programs in place to help the people who have less to spend also be able to go to the park.
I think that's wonderful. Right. And I think maybe some parks have lost that. So I'm glad that you have that here still. That's terrific.
And if there's one element of the Efteling you could bring to a park in the United States, what would it be?
Oh boy, I wish it could be as as relaxing to get around.
Okay, yeah.
I just feel like I'm in a tin of sardines at most parks. They are so crowded and so full and so hot. I love the openness, the natural aspect. I think maybe having more nature in the park instead of having every square meter, be covered up with a stage, with a restaurant or a store or an attraction or a ride, but instead have open areas where you can walk through and see trees and water and this lovely incorporation of the world into the park instead of just being the park be flattening everything else out. I think, and spreading it out, opening it up, giving you more room to get around. But again, that's a cost benefit analysis that if they can use that quarter of an acre to build another shop, they'll build a shop because you can make more money that way. And I see both sides of the argument, but I like the fact that Efteling has chosen this to be an open, breathable, relaxed space that is very natural. And I'd love that to see more of that if that were possible.
You have this 11% rule, which applies to the Efteling. They are only allowed to build on 11% of the total space. So I guess you need the 11% rule in Florida.
Good luck. I don't know if that would work.
I believe in some reports we saw that Disney's Hollywood Studios had a 60% built environment.
That sounds more like it.
Yeah, 60% of the park was built on. They do have expansion plans on the west side of the park, and there they want to have a more tightly built area, so we might get it at 1.2. So looking forward to how that works out in Efteling.
We'll see. And sometimes they're right adjacent to protected lands, so they can't build them. Or what they can do is they can purchase land somewhere else and define it as being protected to be allowed to build. So it's actually not a terrible thing because they're using land it's protected, but it's right next to a park. It's not exactly natural because you have cars and parking lots and so, whereas you can go out in the middle of nowhere and define an area there as being protected that will never be built on, relocating, so to speak, that protected land to a different area isn't a terrible thing. It lets the Disney park grow a little bit, but it doesn't take away the overall usage of land in the state. It just relocates it somewhere else. So that actually can work out okay.
If that would be allowed in our country, I guess it would be very helpful for the Efteling and its expansion plans.
Yeah.
Ray, to finish up the interview, we have some rapid fire questions for you.
Okay.
And we do this with all the guests that we have, and the idea is that you can answer quickly, but you can also expand a bit. Don't worry if you do that. So let's focus on the Efteling first. What was the most beautiful location in the park for you?
The area in and around Danse Macabre. It just because the whole area was incorporated so beautifully and themed so beautifully into the entire experience, inside and out. Even the queue line, you're right by the woods, and then they had the sound effects of animals growling in a tree that you didn't even know there's a speaker out there. You can't see it. That whole vibe was so beautiful. I'd say that Danse Macabre is it.
And do you also have a favorite attraction or show in the park?
Because I'm a stunt person, I say Ravelin is my favorite. No disrespect to Danse Macabre, what they have done, but Ravelin is personally my favorite.
And what's your most favorite theme park worldwide?
I'm biased towards the one where I worked for so long. Disney's Hollywood Studios is probably because it's always been focused on shows. And it had, at one time, Indiana Jones and Lights, Motors, Action and Fantasmic. And it still has two of those three. Lights, Motors, Action has gone away. But I'm a huge Star Wars fan, so that's great. I have a hard time not going to see Harry Potter, though, at Universal Studios because they have such wonderful theming as well there. And there's a brand new park being built. It's opening up in May of this year, of 2025, I believe. Universal Epic Adventure in Orlando. So that may become it when I get to go visit that.
Epic Universe.
Epic Universe. What did I say?
Epic Adventure.
Epic Adventure. Okay, everything is in my head program. So.
And do you also have some favorite rides worldwide? Just focusing on the rides?
Oh boy. It's funny. It's an older roller coaster, but I really liked the Incredible Hulk roller coaster, which is really neat. But if I had to pick one ride that was my favorite ride, of course, Danse Macabre is wonderful. My favorite one, really, there's the Hagrid's, and I'm going to say the name wrong, but there's a Hagrid motorbike.
Magical Creatures Motorbike.
Thank you. See, the experts know. I think that's why I got the epic part wrong, because it's Indiana Jones Epic Stunt Show, Epic Adventure, and now it's Epic Park, and I'm getting the epic word mixed up. But the Hagrid's motorbike, that is phenomenal design. It's a fast ride. You get the thrill of the fast ride, but then you stop and see characters, and you have interactions and moving around. I don't want to give it away because it's just a fabulous ride that I think is maybe my favorite ride.
And now the most important question of this episode. What is your favorite theme park show ever?
Probably going to say the Indiana Jones Epic So Spectacular. I think that might have been given to me.
I expected that.
That's too much history there. That's really my baby. Yeah.
And at the moment?
I'm going to have to really, I think the fact that Ravelin actually had horses and dragons and sword fighting and fire. I could go back to Puy du Fou and try to think of the shows that I saw there as well, because I think every show I saw at Puy du Fou was equally extraordinary. So I'm not sure I could pick one, and it's been 5 or 6 years. I can't remember what they all were. But all these, because I'm a sword fighting stage combat guy, anything that has fighting in it and dragons and medieval and fighting and horses, that's why Ravelin, I think, is right up there among the best of my favorite shows.
Ravelin sounds much more cooler in English than in Dutch.
Yeah, than in Dutch. Yeah, that's it, Ray.
Yeah, it's a wrap.
Yeah, it's a
That's
wrap.
what they say.
It's a wrap.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
And if people want to know more about you or want to learn more about what you're currently doing, where can they follow you online?
Oh boy, I'm terrible about being online. I have plenty of the students and staff here have connected with me on LinkedIn. They can find me there. I don't really do a whole lot of social. I'm older than everyone in the room, I think, so I'm not really big on Instagram or other social media platforms. But I should be better about that. So I'll just say try to find me on LinkedIn if you want to track me down there.
Yeah, we will add a link to our show notes so people can find you there.
Thanks a lot. It was a very inspiring interview, and I learned a lot.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it. This is a lot of fun. You guys are great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nou, dat was weer. Ik hoop dat de mensen niet al te hard hebben zitten cringen om onze Engels.
En ik hoop dat het te volgen was.
Ja, zeker. Nou, Ray was in ieder geval een enorm toffe gast. Als mensen ons online willen vinden, dan kunnen ze naar onze website gaan. kleineboodschap.com/volgen is de pagina waar je alle social media kanalen vindt waar wij te vinden zijn. Kun je ook berichten naar ons sturen. Je kunt ook, als je dan toch op de website bent, naar het contactformuliertje gaan. Of je mailt ons op info@kleineboodschap.com.
Je luistert Kleine Boodschap in je favoriete podcast-app, maar ook op Spotify, YouTube en op onze website. En dat is kleineboodschap.com. Daar vind je alle afleveringen, ook diegenen die niet meer in je podcastfeed passen. En natuurlijk ook de show notes, de relevante linkjes bij de afleveringen. Luister je ons naar in de podcast-app, zorg dan dat je je abonneert. Dan mis je geen enkele aflevering. En we kunnen het ook altijd heel erg waarderen als je een rating of een review achterlaat.
Ja, dan heb je die mensen in je omgeving die het heel tof vinden om meer te leren over pretparkshows, zeker wereldwijd. Nou, dan is dit natuurlijk de aflevering om ons een keer te tippen.
Of de Amerikaanse parken, hè?
Zeker, zeker. Dat was in ieder geval weer voor deze week. Bedankt voor het luisteren. Tot de volgende keer. En houdoe.
Houdoe.
Have great adventures.